Good morning and welcome. I'm Ritvij, and today we are discussing one of the defining questions of our era: how Europe secures its future in a world transformed by Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. My guest today is someone who has been at the center of these debates for years. Tomáš Petříček served as Foreign Minister of Czech Republic, a country whose own experience with Soviet domination gives it a particularly sharp understanding of what Russian aggression means and what's at stake when democracies are challenged. Today, advises Czech President Petr Pavel on foreign policy and is a researcher at the Institute of International Relations in Prague. Throughout the war in Ukraine, he has been a strong voice arguing that lasting peace cannot come at the expense of Ukraine's sovereignty and that any attempt to trade away Ukraine's future would have consequences not just for Kyiv but for European security as a whole. Minister Petříček, it's a pleasure to have you here with us. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine is not just a regional conflict, and many experts argue it is the defining test of whether the rules-based international order can survive. As a former foreign minister from a country that lived under Soviet domination, how do you frame the moral and historic obligation of European states to stand with Ukraine?
I think first that the moral argument is that force is not a way to achieve national interest or to achieve security interest, especially when it violates international law. I think that we should still stick to the core idea of rules-based international order that might is not a right. And as long as we accept that violence and force and power is given precedence over law and international norms, I think we are not going to have an international order that is better for smaller or mid-sized powers. There's at the same time a practical implication, which is relevant not only for Europe, but for international partners as well. Russia represents what can be seen as a revisionistic approach to international relations. Revisionism as a kind of a let's question the norms and rules that are governing right now the relations between countries. And among one of the key principles is that the sovereignty of another country cannot be violated by force. And this is increasingly present. Russia is not the only one who is increasingly use force to violate its neighbor's sovereignty. And I guess that it's again an issue for all countries that would like to have a peaceful relations with their neighbors or in their region. So it has a broader practical relevance. And lastly, I think it also takes a lot of resources. It has increased the tension in the global economy. So it has also broader geo-economic repercussions.
Yeah, when you talk about geo-economic repercussions, what exactly are you pointing towards?
We have seen, for example, and we still live with the impacts of the energy crisis that has been caused by Russia and by the war in 2021 and 2022. The cost of living crisis that has hit Europe, US is more or less spilling over through the global economy, influencing a lot of economic phenomena that we are still witnessing right now. At the same time, I think that it brings a lot of tension in relations between major powers because of reshuffling of global economic relations after the large-scale invasion Russia did in 2022. Only I can mention, for example, the tension between United States and India because of purchasing Russian oil.
Yeah. So when you talk about India's purchase of Russian oil and the negotiations which it had with United States, how do you see this equation, and whom do you held accountable for the situation that arises?
I think that the discussion between Europe, India, and US on this issue has not been always very open and frank. And I think that the recent reactions by President Trump actually has Russian oil as a legitimization issue. I think it is not the core issue for Donald Trump. And we see now that with the situation in the Middle East, this topic is off the table. So I think that in the long run, I think it is understandable that India looks for secure supplies of energy for its households and for its industry. We would like to see maybe that there are alternatives to Russian oil for India available. But I think that's up to the partners to work together with democracies like India to show, look, there are better options. If we are taking advantage of current situation, it might be also short-sighted. That in long run, we are only like helping to feed aggressive powers in the global economy.
Yeah. And how do you view current Indian administration's stance towards the Ukraine war in general? You mentioned about India's purchase of Russian oil. How as a former European policymaker, you see the situation?
I think Europe is not here to lecture India about how to react to the war. I understand the historical ties India has with Russia. Russia was there when India was to some extent isolated in the past and was a very credible partner. And in international relations, we cannot expect that this kind of partnership will end up immediately, even though we believe that urgency is there, that the war in Ukraine shows that Russia is no longer credible, reliable partner that brings stability to international relations or international system. We need to work with India and having a long vision for cooperating with India to come up with a more credible and more beneficial relationship between EU, for example, and India. And I see right now that India is aware that it needs other partners as well. That the EU now might be one of the best options for India with India idea of multi-alignment. Still, I think there will need to be some kind of alignments between democracies on the one hand, open economies, between countries that really believe that the open international system where rules and norms should be valid and should apply in all cases. I think that's why, for example, I think that Europe will be the option for India instead of trusting to authoritarian countries such as Russia.
Yeah. Deviating from the Ukraine war topic and stressing more on India-European partnership, recently we saw in historic India-EU free trade agreement, coming in full flow. And then apart from this, India has increased its defense engagement with the West, particularly a reported Rafale deal with France, a reported submarine deal with Germany. So how do you see India's new approach of, making relations with the West stronger, particularly Europe?
I think it corresponds with increasing awareness on both sides that our interests are not in conflict. On the contrary, our interests and also our key priorities in many ways are allowing for synergies. For example, Europe, India, we both share a very keen interest in ensuring for example, freedom of navigation in Indian Ocean. We want to have more connectivity options. We want that the trade flow between the two continents, between two partners, is not interrupted by irresponsible third parties, as we see in the Red Sea, in a case of Houthi rebels, very often, or now we see in case of Hormuz Strait. I think we also are keenly interested in not allowing the global politics to turn into two blocks dynamism as we saw it before 1989. during the Cold War. I think that both India and Europe, I think we want to really have open international order without two blocs standing face to face in a perpetual tension. And I think we also increasingly are aware that we are having a shared interest in economic areas, from the interest to catch up technologically with China and US, to be part of the development of key geoeconomical tools from AI, cloud, robotics, to also fully tap opportunities, for example, of green transition, of renewable energy for boosting our economies. And there, I think, is now accelerating very much its push for increasing the green components in its energy mix, making its economy more resilient, facing the climate change impact. I think that there are very natural and very honest areas, very honest interest in cooperating in these areas.
Yeah. Coming back to our topic of Ukraine war and European security, Europe has stepped up military aid, financial packages, sanctions, but Ukraine's commanders and many analysts say the support has arrived too late and in insufficient quantities. What concrete steps should the EU take right now to accelerate and deepen its backing, and which member states need to do significantly more?
I think we finally managed to overcome the deadlock caused by former Hungarian government, which used the loan to Ukraine as a kind of leverage to achieve other political goals. With new Hungarian government, the loan was unblocked. Now is distributed. True, yeah, it's coming probably later than it should have been, but it is still allowing Ukraine both to continue its defense, and it is very important for Ukraine society to go on, because it is also helping to finance key public services. And true is there is still more we can do on for example ammunition. There is still an interest to have more partners supplying Ukraine with ammunition. One of the key initiatives, the so-called ammunition initiative, is now facing an issue that the less and less partners are contributing. And for example, my own country, Czechia, with the new government, should maybe reconsider contributing again to this initiative, not only through practical coordination of this important idea, this important platform for helping Ukraine, but also bringing own resources and putting money where your lips are is at the end what makes the difference. And at the same time, I think we should probably see Ukraine differently than maybe a few years ago. Ukraine still needs our help. That's true. Ukraine needs our assistance. But Ukraine is increasingly capable of providing itself, not only for its own defense, but increasingly even for its partners. We have recently witnessed how Ukraine was able to assist countries in the West Asia during the Iranian attacks, providing both expertise but also technology in some key modern warfare technological areas. Ukraine is at the cutting edge of development, and I think Ukraine will be one of the most important defense industrial partner for democracies in the future, and that's very positive signal as well.
Yeah, you mentioned about Ukraine being a defense industrial hub, and we have seen how well Ukraine has integrated digital governance and defense into one another, and provided an example to the wider world that how modern war fighting has changed and how you perfect the art of modern war fighting. Coming onto this question, how do you see this Ukraine's integration of digitalization and defense and its broader efforts for European security?
We are increasingly using Ukraine expertise. It's the trend is now, I think, reversing. That's true. Still, European countries help to train, help with capabilities of Ukraine army, but more and more we have European countries sending their experts to see how the war is fought, how new technologies are deployed, not only how they can be developed, but especially how they can be tactically deployed in the field. I think that Ukraine is having enormous expertise, and that's why it will be important to retain the strengths Ukraine gained through the conflict, paying enormous price in terms of human sacrifices. But I think that's will be precious to understand how the future warfare might look like, how, for example, we can deal with not only military threats, but Ukraine is very effective in addressing Russian digital hybrid threats. Its society is very resilient, and these are areas where Europe is already looking for inspiration and looking for how to share and maybe implement this knowledge and expertise to increase European defense strengths and our society's resilience.
Yeah. Coming to the angle of United States, there is a growing pressure from a certain segment of the US to push Ukraine into a ceasefire that might reward Russian aggression with territorial gains. Why is a just and durable peace on Ukraine's terms not only morally right, but strategically essential for European security and for the security of wider Western world?
I want to stress that there is a broad agreement that if in Europe that if Russia is avoided, if Russia achieves its strategical intentions, if it gains large parts of Ukraine, it might only encourage Russia to use force in the future against another European country. We have Russian revisionistic positions towards, for example, Baltic republics, the three relatively small independent countries that are members of the European Union, that are our allies. They are also having a Russian minority, and we know that Russia is using this very often as a pretext for incursions and for undermining other countries' sovereignty. So the European experts, and I think that's highly relevant, are warning that if Russia gains, and if Russia can see itself as winning out of the war it launched against Ukraine, it might be only pretext for Russia to think about using it elsewhere and maybe testing European defense and testing also European unity in 4, maybe 5 years.
Yeah. Coming to the Ukraine's EU accession, how do you see the whole situation around that?
I think there has been some positive news recently. The enlargement has been discussed over the last week at the level of heads of governments. Very important meeting took place in Montenegro recently, and I think that that's a signal that EU is honestly considering that it needs to make enlargement credible again. That a lot of people don't trust that enlargement is a process that might end up with full membership for countries like Montenegro, Moldova, and at the end Ukraine. I think now there is a real chance that the enlargement process will be relaunched in a more efficient way. And at the same time, I have to stress that Ukraine has still a lot of reforms to do. And indeed, it is difficult to focus all your energy on defending your country and at the same time making substantial reforms from economic transformation or economic reforms, judiciary reform, like improving the rule of law. All of this is precondition for membership. And I think that our historical experience is that we should think strategically, but be also honest with our partners that yes, there will be no easy way. This is not because of us, it is because of you becoming in the future full member with all opportunities, but also with all the responsibilities. And that's the now when you need to do your homework.
Yeah. Stressing more on Ukraine. So Ukraine's courageous resistance has exposed both the importance of NATO and the urgent need for Europe to build genuine defense capacity of its own. How do we turn this moment of threat into a founding impulse for a truly capable, sovereign European defense? How do you see the collective European security and the importance of defense industrial base shaping this?
Europe has been relying on US for too long time. And I think last 2 years or last year especially shows that Europe needs to be able to really take care of its own defense, even without, let's say, conventional support of United States. It is accepted across the main European countries. I think that all important players in Europe are now really expecting that their defense posture is going to change. Starting with Poland, that has been aware about Russian threat for many years, and Poland has been investing in its own defense more than the other, even more than United States themselves over the past years. I think Germany and France are now catching up, and we still have like United Kingdom that is very closely working with European Union key partners in different frameworks. Unfortunately, I think we face again an issue of unity. There are countries that are still questioning how serious the situation is. There are countries that feel that free riding can still work in this context. And I would like to warn that this is not going to work for long. And if this remains an problem for strategic trust among European countries, we can also see that some actors, some powers will move on unilateral platforms. I see, for example, that there will be more and more and closer cooperation, for example, in the Nordic Baltic area with Poland, Germany, Sweden, Finland, Denmark, and Baltic countries working closer and closer, maybe joined with Norway and UK. And this might be very strong and credible platform for cooperation.
Yeah, and
However, I would like to stress that the EU itself is aware that EU need to step up. They need to invest more. They need to invest smarter. It need to improve, for example, chain of command. It need to improve its strategic capabilities. It is not at the end. It is not only about how many planes, jets you have, what kind of hardware you have. It's mainly about how you can react in a moment of crisis, whether you have a good chain of command, whether you have good strategic planning, and whether you have political will to underpin everything.
Yeah, and just very briefly, I would like to conclude the discussion by asking that, how do you see the future going forward for Ukraine and European security, and what are the next steps for Ukraine and for EU and for Europe as a whole in order to protect the liberal international?
I see that EU needs to regain some self-confidence. It's also about the posture, about how we speak about our strategic position. I think Europe is not weak. Europe is rich, has enormous human and economic resources, and when properly mobilized, I think Europe can take care of its own defense and its own security and become a credible security partner for others. So in few years, I think we will see more confident Europe standing on its own legs, working with other like-minded countries from Canada, India, Japan, Korea, Australia. I think Europe might be now turning towards these partners to create platforms for cooperation, to address some of the issues we cannot probably right now address through existing multilateral organizations. Europe will work more closely, for example, with India on safeguarding some of the key interconnectivity lines, safeguarding and providing stability to key regions or sub-regions in Indian Ocean. And I think India and Europe will work much, much closer together. And with Ukraine in mind, I think we can hope for the conflict being over soon, because it is taking enormous toll. It is really sad to see how many lives are lost because of Russian aggression. And I think that what we need to think about is not only how to help Ukraine win the peace, let's say, or win the war, or defend its sovereignty. What we will need to think is how to win Ukraine a good peace and lasting peace, with all the issues that the long-term recovery from the conflict can bring. And there is an opportunity for partners from other parts of the world as well. Ukraine will need to rebuild its economy, but at the same time, Ukraine will be freer to share its expertise, from technological expertise. But Ukraine has been very effective, for example, in maintaining its energy system intact, making it more dynamic, more flexible. All this knowledge might be available for other partners to work with Europe, Ukraine on sharing this knowledge for mutual help.
Thank you so much, Minister, for your valuable insights on this critical topic, and really appreciate you being here on the show.
Thank you very much for inviting me.